Now for tonight's American issue, Irshad Manji has devoted her life's work to normalizing Islam and making it a mainstream religion in America, an uphill battle. She teaches at New York University and is author of the new book, Allah, Liberty, and Love, The Courage to Reconcile Faith and Freedom. Welcome, Irshad.
Thanks, Elliot.
Frequent guest here, always fascinating conversation. Before we get started, I want to show you a moment from last night's GOP presidential debate where the issue of hiring those who are Islamic, those who are Muslim, to be in the cabinet was raised, and a question was asked to Herman Cain, a presidential candidate. Take a listen.
And you recently said you would not appoint a Muslim to your cabinet. Then you kind of backed off that a little bit and said that you would first want to know if they are committed to the Constitution. You expressed concern that, quote, a lot of Muslims are not totally dedicated to this country. Are American Muslims as a group less committed to the Constitution than, say, Christians or Jews?
First, the statement was, would I be comfortable with a Muslim in my administration? Not that I wouldn't appoint one. That's the exact transcript. And I would not be comfortable because you have peaceful Muslims, and then you have militant Muslims, those that are trying to kill us. And so when I said I wouldn't be comfortable, I was thinking about the ones that are trying to kill us.
All right, you hear that where those who are Islamic or Muslim faith are specifically singled out as somehow being different. How do you react to that?
So it would, first of all, be very lazy and easy for me, you, anybody, to accuse him of Muslim baiting. I think it's more constructive and healing, actually, Elliot, to try to understand where Herman Cain's and other Americans' high defenses about Muslims is coming from. And I think it's coming from the suspicion that we as Muslims are not telling the truth about what's really going on in our community. Let me give you a quick example, because I think, precision is important here. For example, when Major Nidal Malik Hassan, opens fire on fellow soldiers at Fort Hood, Texas, with the words Allahu Akbar, God is great, spilling from his lips. And a mainstream moderate organization like the Council on American Islamic Relations says, no, don't misunderstand, Islam has nothing to do with this. Americans, can't be blamed for scratching their heads and wondering, well, wait a minute, this guy is shouting Allahu Akbar, you're saying Islam has nothing to do with this. Help us out here. There's a disconnect. And many moderate Muslims are not willing to step up to the plate to say, you know what, maybe he's got a particular interpretation of Islam that we need to challenge boldly. We're not hearing that from moderate Muslims
yet.
Well,
that's the point. I mean, what you have written about so persuasively and spoken about so eloquently is that the sort of conception of Islam that we take away from those events is a uniformity, speaks to a uniformity that is wrong and does not understand either the history of the religion, which you write about, or what most of those who follow the Islamic faith are really all about.
Yeah, but it's we Muslims, Elliot, who, if we want to showcase the diversity of thought within Islam, we are the ones who need to start showing that diversity of thought. We need to break our silences. We need to stop being so mute.
And that is part of the transformation you say you've gone through from anger to aspiration, right?
Yeah.
Explain this.
Sure. So my previous book, The Trouble with Islam Today, was really motivated by a raw anger about the absurdity, the hypocrisy, the stupidity that's so often being tolerated in the name of my beloved faith of Islam. Now, I'm still angry about a lot of what's going on, but you know what I've come to realize in the, in the decade since I wrote that book and coming to this point now? That I'm not alone. That there's a community of reform-minded Muslims, not the least of whom constitute the Arab Spring, who are hungering, busting, in fact, to reconcile faith and freedom. So I've come to realize that voices like mine, though you rarely hear them on television or anywhere else, are not voices in the wilderness.
And this is the absence of what you refer to as the moral courage.
Yeah, moral courage actually is a phrase that Robert F. Kennedy, popularized back in the 1960s. It's about speaking up when everybody else wants to shut you up. And I'm arguing in this book that both Muslims and non-Muslims need to develop the moral courage to speak truth to power. Non-Muslims need to stop worrying about being, about offending others by asking questions that we Muslims need to hear. And Muslims need to speak up within our communities. So this is a book for everybody, not just Muslims.
And this is the distinction that you describe as the distinction between faith and dogma. Tell us about that quickly, because it seems like...
I have faith, I don't have dogma. Faith is secure enough to handle questions. Dogma, on the other hand, can't handle questions because dogma, by definition, is rigid and brittle, and it snaps under the spotlight of questions, and therefore, in my view, deserves to be threatened.
And this goes to something that I hope I don't pronounce wrong, ijtihad.
Yeah, beautiful.
Which is what? Explain that.
Ijtihad is Islam's own tradition of independent thinking and creative reasoning. And I know that to many American ears that sounds perilously like jihad. And in fact, it comes from the same root, to struggle. But unlike any notion of violent struggle, Elliot, ijtihad is all about struggling with the mind in order to comprehend the world.
And you make the fascinating observation that when that ijtihad was part of the Islamic tradition and more dominant, up to about 1,000 years ago, Islam was, in fact, perhaps the dominant intellectual religion in the world.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then it was suppressed.
Right, for all kinds of political reasons. But the point is this, that we as Muslims in America are perfectly poised to rediscover ijtihad, to practice it again, and in that way to really, bring the practice of our faith up for the 21st century.
All right, Irshad Manji, as always, thank you for that passionate, fascinating insights. Up ahead, we've asked politicians to give us their cuts, their compromises. For the most part, they've given